Okay, so we're here in lesson 16 begin, and we're going to start talking about adding some animation, some dynamics to our fur. Now, there's a couple different ways we can go about this. The first method we're going to look at is kind of the more involved one. We're going to actually turn our fur here into Maya hair, or the new NHair system, and we're then going to combine that with the already existing fur so that one drives the other. So to start this off, what we need to do is add a specialized modifier. And that's going to be over here under modifiers. And we're going to come over here to add. And what we're looking for is called the anim wires or the animation wires. So let's go ahead and select that and hit OK. All right. So there's a lot of stuff over here. We're going to discuss a little bit more of this later on. However, at the moment, you're going to find that it doesn't really do anything. And sometimes, I'm not seeing it right now, but down in your actual output area, sorry, it's totally spacing on what it's called. I'm talking about this little area right over here. Uh, Sometimes you're even going to see an error there, basically letting you know that it doesn't know what to do. And that's because to kind of start off over here, we have to come down to our control map. The control map is where the animated hairs are going to actually be created. So to go ahead and just kind of clean this up a little bit, I'm going to go click here to hide that. And let's come up here to create maps. Okay. And you can see it's going to go ahead and put in the description. It's going to make a module for it, make a points folder there. We can hit generate just to see how many it's creating right now. Don't worry that you can kind of see them up top over here and on bottom. It will create a few of them in erroneous places. They're going to be very easy to delete though. And it does pay attention to our settings, for example, where we've painted some of our baldness and masks and things like that. So it will hide those away for us a little bit later on. So I'm just looking at the overall amount of hairs. Now you have to be careful here. Not enough hairs and your ultimate kind of results not going to be very good. The reason is that every one of these hairs here is going to affect the surrounding hairs, almost kind of like weights, and move those around. If you don't have enough, if let's say we bring our density down to 0.1 and hit generate here, this one hair has to control all the hairs in this area, even though they're at different angles. You know, we have different normals and things like that. Same thing here. This one is going to control most of the top of the neck, but it's going to blend with this one. So you can imagine it's going to create weird artifacts, hair that kind of intersects with itself, so on and so forth. It will, however, simulate really quickly because there aren't that many hairs here. On the other hand, if I maybe up this to 4, hit generate, we now have a lot. There's obviously going to be more than enough to simulate any part of the body here, but trying to simulate this many hairs at once, unless you have one heck of a machine, is not really going to be very efficient. So you need to be just a little careful about how many you put. I'm going to do maybe 1.5. It's still a lot. Let me try maybe 1.3. I'm going to try something like that. It's still a pretty good amount of hairs on there, but it's not beyond excessive. So I'm going to go ahead and just hit down over here, create. It's going to go ahead and create those, and it's creating. It actually creates them based on the clumping maps. But it's gone ahead and made those for me, and you actually can't see them. If you want to see what these are going to look like, you can hit preview wires right here. And now you can see where those hairs are going to be created. So you can see there's a few erroneous ones here, probably where my maps weren't perfectly dead on painted. So I'm going to have to delete those a little bit later. But for the most part, it's done a pretty decent job. There is a little bit of weirdness over here with a couple of these short hairs. And it looks like it's not even that they're sticking in. They are just short hairs. So I'm going to probably have to go in and manually repair a few of those. I'm not sure why those happen. Obviously, I have more than enough fur there. My thought is that it is picking random hairs, and maybe a couple of the hairs I have there are really short, you know, just intertwined with some of the long ones. But again, all that can be fixed manually. So once we've gone ahead here and done our preview wires, if you like what you have, then great. You can go ahead and hit create the hair system. Otherwise, what you can do is obviously go back and try to recreate those wires. I'm going to see how this turns out. So I'm going to come over here to create hair system. Now it's going to bring up your kind of traditional dynamic curves menu, the same thing you get whenever you create NHair. If you don't have a lot of experience with NHair, I would advise you probably to take a look at some other tutorials on Digital Tutors. It is quite a large and involved system. I'm going to guide you through the steps you need just to make this fur dynamic and the settings that I'm going to ultimately put in to get the effect that I want. But if you really want a great overall overview of it, then again, I recommend looking at some of the more dedicated hair dynamics tutorials on Digital Tutors, and there are quite a few of them. So you can see that right now the only settings I have here is the fact that it's going to be attached to the selected surface. If I were to reset this, you can see that exact shape match is also a default. I don't think that's going to be absolutely necessary. I don't mind if the shapes change slightly, if that means I can reduce the amount of points and therefore simulate a little bit faster. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Make Curves Dynamic, and this may take just a moment. Okay, it's gone ahead and created it. There definitely is a little bit of problem with some of these short hairs. I'm going to have to come in here and manually grab them and extend them out. You can see that there are actual NURBS curves in here that we'll be able to affect. But overall, we've now added hairs. Now, it's important to know that at the moment, this hair system is not yet attached or associated with our XGen fur. First of all, if I were to go ahead and hit play over here, you could see that it's actually leaving most of the dynamic hair behind. It's not even moving with it. And notice it's not even animating. The reason that's, you can see right there, the hairs. The reason they're not animating is because they're actually not yet set up to. In fact, they only started. You can see they finally began shifting a little bit here at frame 0. So what we need to do is tell Nucleus which is what drives our NHair, tell it to actually begin calculating at -30. So to do that, I'm going to jump to my attribute editor here, and I'll select my Nucleus node right down here. I'm going to drop down here to my time attributes, and I'm going to change my start frame to -30. Go ahead and rewind that. And we should now see that they do begin animating right away. So you can see they're kind of it's going along with the drag forces there. They're kind of whipping around a little bit over here. And they've definitely dropped down on his body. Now, if I were to re-preview my actual XGen fur, while it does ultimately follow the body, you could see it's not paying any attention so far to the actual hairs. You can see these blue hairs are sticking out this way. This is still just matching the normals of our model. So these are things we're going to actually start taking a look at a little bit later. What we want to do for right now is find a way to start fine-tuning the animation on these actual NHairs. We want to get them to react the way we actually want the fur to look. We don't want it necessarily whipping around in every direction. We want it to follow the motion of the body, maybe look like it's being disturbed a bit by the air that's passing over it, but I don't need it flopping around everywhere. So in the next lesson, I think that's what we should probably get started on, and once we figure all that out, I'll show you how we can come in and now attach this dynamic fur to our actual XGen hair. And that's relatively easy. You probably already guessed there's a button here called Attach Hair System. It's not really rocket science. But again, I highly advise you actually go ahead and adjust all the settings for your NHair system first. It's just going to be much, much easier. And you'll see a little later why. It's going to get super slow once this is attached. So I'm going to go ahead and end this lesson here. And in the next lesson, we'll start fine-tuning the dynamics of the hair. So I'll see you guys there.